I'm calling the police. That is what Dr. Helena Marks said to me. My name is Diana Thompson, and for the past 5 years, I had devoted every waking moment to caring for my husband, Marcus. 5 years of sleepless nights, endless medications, physical therapy sessions, doctor's appointments, and the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that seeps into your soul. 5 years of love, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to the man who had once been my rock, my partner, my everything. And now, in this cold, clinical space, I was being treated like a criminal. The moment replayed in my mind like a horror film stuck on repeat. Dr. Marks had examined Marcus, her expression growing increasingly grave. She'd asked me questions, pointed, suspicious questions, about his care, his medications, his injuries. Her eyes had narrowed when I explained how he'd fallen from his wheelchair earlier that day, how I'd tried to catch him but wasn't fast enough, how his frail body had hit the floor with a sickening thud that still echoed in my ears. "Mrs. Thompson," she'd said, her voice clipped and professional, devoid of warmth. "Your husband has multiple injuries in various stages of healing. Bruises, old fractures that were never properly set, signs of malnutrition. This isn't consistent with a single fall." "But I can explain," I'd started, my voice cracking. She'd held up her hand, silencing me. "I'm required by law to report suspected abuse or neglect. I'm calling the police." The word abuse had hit me like a physical blow. Abuse. After everything I'd done, everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd given up to keep Marcus alive, comfortable, loved. The accusation was so absurd, so grotesquely unfair, that for a moment I couldn't even process it. Now, sitting in this waiting room with 2 uniformed officers positioned near the entrance, ostensibly for everyone's safety, but clearly to ensure I didn't flee, I felt the weight of every eye in the room upon me. A black woman accused of harming her vulnerable white husband. I could see it in their faces, the quick judgments forming, the assumptions crystallizing. The narrative was already being written in their minds, and I was cast as the villain. My phone buzzed in my purse, but I was afraid to reach for it. Any sudden movement might be misinterpreted. Everything I did now was evidence, every gesture scrutinized for signs of guilt. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, trying to breathe through the panic that threatened to overwhelm me. "Mrs. Thompson." A detective in a gray suit approached me, his expression professionally neutral but his eyes watchful. "I'm Detective James Kowalski. I need to ask you some questions about your husband's condition." I looked up at him, tears already burning behind my eyes. "Is Marcus okay? Can I see him?" "He's being examined now. The doctors are stabilizing him." He pulled up a chair, sitting at an angle that blocked my view of the exit. "I need you to tell me, in your own words, what happened today." "In your own words." As if I might have been planning to use someone else's. I took a shaky breath, willing myself to stay calm, to be articulate, to somehow convince this man that I was not the monster his colleague believed me to be. Marcus and I were at home. I was helping him with his morning routine. "What does that routine involve?" he interrupted, pen poised over his notepad. "Everything," I said, and heard the exhaustion bleed into my voice. "Marcus has been paralyzed from the waist down since his accident 5 years ago. He also has limited mobility in his left arm and some cognitive impairment from his traumatic brain injury. I help him with bathing, dressing, using the bathroom, eating, taking his medications, everything." "That sounds like a lot for one person." "It is." My voice was barely above a whisper. "But he's my husband. I love him. Do you have any help? Home health aides? Nurses?" This was where the story got complicated, where the cracks in our perfect caregiving scenario would become visible. We did, at first. But our insurance stopped covering home health care after the first year. We couldn't afford to pay out of pocket. Marcus's medical bills are astronomical. I had to quit my job as a nurse to care for him full-time. We're surviving on his disability payments and what little savings we had left. Detective Kowalski's pen scratched across the paper. "You're a nurse." I was. I worked in pediatric oncology at Children's Memorial for 12 years before Marcus's accident. I'd loved that job, loved those brave children, loved making a difference. Giving it up had broken something in me, but there had been no choice. Marcus needed me more. So you have medical training. The way he said it made it sound sinister, as if my nursing background made me more capable of hurting Marcus rather than better equipped to care for him. I felt the ground shifting beneath me, the narrative being constructed in real time. Yes, I have medical training, which is why I know how to care for someone with Marcus's complex needs. I know how to prevent bed sores, how to administer medications properly, how to perform range of motion exercises, how to watch for signs of infection or complications. And yet he's here with multiple injuries. The accusation hung in the air between us, heavy and damning. I felt something crack inside me, the careful composure I'd been trying to maintain splintering under the weight of his judgment. Do you know what it's like? The words burst out of me, raw and desperate. Do you have any idea what it's like to care for someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no breaks, no help, no support? To watch someone you love struggle with the simplest tasks? To see the frustration in their eyes when their body won't do what their mind wants it to do? To feel them slipping away, piece by piece, no matter how hard you fight to keep them with you? Detective Kowalski's expression didn't change. Why don't you tell me about the fall today? I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to hold back the tears. When I spoke again, my voice was steadier, more controlled. Marcus wanted to transfer from his bed to his wheelchair. He's been insisting on doing more for himself lately, trying to maintain some independence. I was helping him, but he lost his balance. I tried to catch him, but he's bigger than me. He weighs about 180, I'm only about 135, and I couldn't hold him. He fell, hit the floor hard. I called 911 immediately. Dr. Marks says his injuries aren't consistent with a single fall. Because they're not from a single fall. The words came out sharper than I intended, edged with desperation. Do you think today was the first time Marcus has fallen? He has balance issues, dizziness from his medications, weakness from being bedridden so much. He's fallen dozens of times over the past 5 years, despite my best efforts to prevent it. Every time he transfers from bed to chair, from chair to toilet, from wheelchair to shower chair, there's a risk. I do everything I can to keep him safe, but I can't prevent every accident. I'm one person, detective. One exhausted, overwhelmed person trying to do the work of an entire care facility. What about the malnutrition? That one hurt the most, cut the deepest. I thought of the hours I'd spent preparing nutritious meals, trying to tempt Marcus to eat when his depression made food tasteless, when his medications killed his appetite, when swallowing became difficult and every meal was a battle. Marcus has dysphagia, difficulty swallowing, I explained, fighting to keep my voice steady. It's a complication of his brain injury. He's also severely depressed, which affects his appetite. I do everything I can to make sure he gets adequate nutrition. I prepare high-calorie smoothies, soft foods that are easier to swallow, supplements recommended by his doctors. But sometimes he refuses to eat. Sometimes he can't eat. Do you know what it's like to watch someone you love waste away, no matter how hard you try to nourish them? Have you considered placing him in a facility? The question felt like a knife between my ribs. Of course I'd considered it. I'd lain awake countless nights weighing the options, wrestling with guilt and exhaustion and the fear that I wasn't enough, that I was failing Marcus despite my best efforts. We can't afford it, I said quietly. The facilities that accept Medicaid in our area have waiting lists years long, and the conditions. I stopped, swallowing hard. I visited some of them. Understaffed, patients lying in soiled beds, call buttons going unanswered for hours. I couldn't do that to Marcus. I couldn't put him in a place where he'd be neglected, forgotten. At least at home, he has me. He has someone who loves him, who sees him as a person and not just another patient to be processed through the system. Some would say he needs professional care. Some would say a lot of things when they're not the ones living this reality every day. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face, and I didn't care anymore. Some people would judge without understanding, without knowing what it costs to keep someone alive, to keep them comfortable, to preserve their dignity when everything about their situation strips dignity away. Detective Kowalski closed his notepad. Mrs. Thompson, I'm going to need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement. Am I under arrest? My voice sounded hollow, distant, as if it belonged to someone else. Not at this time. But we're conducting an investigation. Dr. Marks has documented evidence of what she believes is neglect and possible abuse. Adult Protective Services will be involved. A social worker is already on their way. The walls felt like they were closing in. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. I want to see my husband. That's not possible right now. He needs me. Marcus needs me. He doesn't do well with strangers. He gets confused, frightened. Please. I was begging now, all pride abandoned. Please let me see him. Let me explain to him what's happening. He'll be terrified without me. I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. Until we complete our investigation, it's better if you don't have contact with the victim. The victim. That's what Marcus was now. And I was the perpetrator, the abuser, the monster who had harmed him. I thought of Marcus lying in some hospital room, confused and frightened, calling for me, wondering why I wasn't there. The image was unbearable. After 5 years of being his constant companion, his caregiver, his advocate, his lifeline, suddenly I was being cut off from him, cast as his enemy. A woman in a burgundy blazer approached us, her ID badge identifying her as Sarah Winters from Adult Protective Services. She had kind eyes, but her expression was serious, professional. She'd seen cases like mine before, I realized. Women who claimed to be caregivers but were really something much darker. Mrs. Thompson, I'm Sarah Winters. I need to ask you some questions about Mr. Thompson's living situation and care. I answered her questions mechanically, my mind numb with shock. I described our daily routine, Marcus's medical conditions, his medications, his therapy schedule. I explained our financial situation, the mounting medical debt, the constant struggle to afford supplies, medications, equipment. I told her about the wheelchair I'd bought secondhand because we couldn't afford a new one, about the hospital bed donated by a local church, about the grab bars I'd installed myself in the bathroom. With every detail I provided, I could see the picture forming in her mind. A struggling black woman, drowning in debt and responsibility, cracking under the pressure. A vulnerable white man, entirely dependent on someone who might not be capable of caring for him properly. The racial dynamics of the situation weren't lost on me, weren't lost on anyone, I was sure. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by your caregiving duties? Sarah asked gently. Every day, I admitted. Every single day. But feeling overwhelmed doesn't mean I hurt Marcus. It means I'm human. It means I'm carrying more than any one person should have to carry, but I do it anyway because I love him. Caregiver stress is very real, Mrs. Thompson. Sometimes people reach a breaking point. I haven't reached a breaking point, I interrupted, my voice firm despite the tears. I haven't hurt my husband. Every injury, every bruise, every problem, they all have explanations. Marcus is medically fragile. His bones are weak from lack of mobility and poor calcium absorption. He bruises easily because of blood thinners. He's prone to skin tears and pressure sores because his circulation is poor. These are complications of his condition, not evidence of abuse. Then why didn't you document these incidents? Why weren't you taking him to the doctor regularly? And there it was, the trap I hadn't seen closing around me. We couldn't afford it. Do you know how much a doctor's visit costs when you don't have good insurance? Every appointment is a choice between medical care and groceries, between physical therapy and the electric bill. We only go to the doctor when it's absolutely necessary. Wouldn't you say multiple fractures are absolutely necessary? I didn't know about the fractures. The words came out as a wail. If I had known, if I had any idea, of course I would have taken him in. Marcus never told me he was in that much pain. He must have been suffering in silence, and I didn't know. Don't you think that's killing me right now? Don't you think I'm drowning in guilt, wondering how I missed the signs? Sarah's expression softened slightly, but her professional demeanor remained intact. Mrs. Thompson, I'm going to be honest with you. The situation looks very concerning from the outside. A vulnerable adult with multiple untreated injuries, signs of malnutrition, inadequate medical care. As a medical professional yourself, you should have known that these issues required intervention. I did know. I was sobbing now, my composure completely shattered. I knew, and I did everything in my power to address them. But knowledge doesn't equal resources. Understanding what Marcus needs doesn't magically create the money to pay for it or the physical ability to meet every single need perfectly every single moment. I'm one person. One exhausted, desperate person doing the absolute best I can with nothing. And now I'm being punished for it. Now I'm being treated like a criminal because I couldn't perform miracles. No one expects miracles, Sarah said quietly. Don't they? I looked at her through my tears. Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like people expect me to provide 24-hour professional-level care on zero budget with zero help, while also being psychic enough to know about injuries Marcus never told me about and wealthy enough to afford constant medical intervention. Those sound like miracle-level expectations to me. A heavy silence fell between us. In the background, the hospital continued its rhythms, nurses calling for assistance, monitors beeping, gurneys rolling past. The world kept turning while mine fell apart. I need to visit your home, Sarah finally said, to assess the living conditions. Of course she did. Of course they needed to document the inadequacy of everything. The cramped apartment, the worn furniture, the makeshift accessibility solutions I'd cobbled together. They needed to build their case, to prove that I was unfit, negligent, abusive. When? I asked dully. Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Is that acceptable? As if I had a choice. Yes. In the meantime, Mr. Thompson will remain in the hospital under observation. A social worker will be assigned to his case. The police investigation will continue. Do you understand what I'm telling you, Mrs. Thompson? I understood perfectly. I understood that I was about to lose everything. My husband, my home life, my identity as a caregiver. Everything I'd built over the past 5 years was being dismantled, examined, and found wanting. I understand, I whispered. Detective Kowalski stood, adjusting his jacket. Mrs. Thompson, you're free to go for now, but don't leave town. We'll be in touch. Free to go. But where would I go? Home to an empty apartment that would echo with Marcus's absence? The bedroom we'd converted into a care suite, now feeling like a crime scene? The kitchen where I'd prepared countless meals, now somehow evidence of my failure to nourish him properly? I gathered my purse with shaking hands and stood on unsteady legs. The walk from the emergency room to the parking lot felt endless, every step weighted with despair. People moved around me, going about their lives, unaware that mine had just imploded. In my car, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel, unable to turn the key. The tears came in great heaving sobs, 5 years of stress, exhaustion, fear, and love pouring out in an unstoppable flood. I cried for Marcus, alone and confused in a hospital room. I cried for myself, accused and judged and found guilty without trial. I cried for the life we'd lost 5 years ago, the dreams that had died with Marcus's accident, the future that had been stolen from us. And underneath it all, a terrible question gnawed at me. Should I have checked the cameras? We'd installed security cameras in Marcus's room 6 months ago, after he'd reported feeling dizzy and disoriented during the night. I'd wanted to be able to monitor him from other rooms in the apartment, to respond quickly if he needed help. The cameras had seemed like a safety measure, a way to keep him protected. Now I wondered if they might hold the evidence that could save me, or damn me. The footage would show everything. Every transfer, every fall, every moment of care. It would show the truth of what happened in our home, the reality of our daily struggle. But it would also show my exhaustion, my occasional impatience, the moments when I'd snapped from frustration before immediately feeling guilty and apologizing. It would show me, imperfect and human and overwhelmed. Would that be enough to prove my innocence? Or would it just provide more ammunition for those who had already decided I was guilty? My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. It was Reverend Patricia Coleman from our church, one of the few people who'd stood by us through these difficult years. "Diana, honey, I just heard. How are you holding up?" The kindness in her voice nearly broke me all over again. "Reverend Pat, they think I hurt Marcus. They think I've been abusing him. That's ridiculous. Anyone who knows you knows that's ridiculous. But they don't know me. The doctor doesn't know me. The police don't know me. They just see a black woman accused of hurting her disabled white husband, and they've already written the story in their heads." Reverend Pat was quiet for a moment. Have you called a lawyer? I hadn't even thought that far ahead. A lawyer. Legal representation. Another expense I couldn't afford, another complication in an already impossible situation. I don't have money for a lawyer. Don't worry about money right now. I know someone who might help. Marcus Watson, no relation to your Marcus. He's a defense attorney who attends Greater Hope Baptist. He's helped people in the community before. Let me call him, explain the situation. Reverend Pat, I can't. You can and you will. Diana, you're not alone in this. The church community loves you and Marcus. We're going to fight this together. After we hung up, I sat in the parking lot for another hour, unable to make myself drive home. Finally, as darkness fell, I started the car and began the journey back to an apartment that would feel cavernous and wrong without Marcus in it. Part 2. The Empty Home. The apartment was dark when I arrived, the streetlights casting long shadows through the windows. I flipped on the lights and immediately wished I hadn't. Everything screamed Marcus's absence. The empty hospital bed, positioned so he could see the television, the wheelchair parked in its usual spot by the window, the walker we'd been using for his standing exercises. His medication organizer sat on the kitchen counter, tomorrow's doses already prepared. I'd filled it just this morning, not knowing that he wouldn't be here to take them. The sight of those small colorful pills, each one representing a battle fought to keep him alive, made my knees weak. I sank into the chair by the window. My chair, the one where I'd spent countless hours watching Marcus sleep, monitoring his breathing, ready to leap up at any sign of distress. From here, I could see the whole room, the bedside table cluttered with medical supplies, the oxygen concentrator humming softly in the corner, the boards we'd mounted on the wall covered with Marcus's physical therapy schedule, his medication list, emergency contact numbers. This room had been my world for 5 years. This room and the man who occupied it. My phone buzzed with a text from Reverend Pat. Marcus Watson will call you tomorrow morning. Don't talk to police without him present. Praying for you. I stared at the message, trying to process the fact that I now needed a defense attorney. Diana Thompson, who'd never even gotten a speeding ticket, who'd built a career on caring for the most vulnerable patients, who devoted her life to helping others. The injustice of it burned through my chest like acid. I thought about the cameras then, the ones mounted in the corners of Marcus's room. The small red lights blinked steadily, recording as they always did. I checked the footage occasionally, usually just to review Marcus's nighttime movements if he reported having a bad dream or feeling unwell. But I'd never watched it systematically, never thought I'd need to. Now, those cameras might be the only thing standing between me and criminal charges. I pulled out my laptop and opened the security system app. The interface showed me 4 different camera angles of Marcus's room, currently empty and achingly quiet. I navigated to the archived footage and started scrolling backward through the days. What was I looking for exactly? Evidence of my innocence? Proof that I'd done everything right? Or was I afraid of what I might find? Moments of frustration, impatience, weakness that could be misinterpreted? I started with today, watching the morning routine unfold on the small screen. There I was, helping Marcus sit up in bed, checking his skin for pressure sores, assisting him with his morning medications. I watched myself speak to him gently, adjusting his pillows, making sure he was comfortable before preparing breakfast. The fall happened at 9:47 a.m. I saw myself helping Marcus transfer from bed to wheelchair. I could see him shift his weight wrong, could see the moment his balance faltered. I watched myself lunge forward, trying to catch him, but his weight was too much. He fell, and I went down with him, both of us hitting the floor hard. On the footage, I immediately checked him for injuries, my nursing training kicking in. I spoke to him calmly, assessed his consciousness, checked his pupils, palpated his limbs for obvious fractures. Then I'd called 911, giving them clear, professional information about his condition and our location. Nothing about the footage suggested abuse. It showed an accident, and someone responding appropriately. But Dr. Marks had said the injuries were from multiple incidents, not just today's fall. I needed to go back further. I spent the next 3 hours reviewing footage from the past month. What I saw on that screen was a documentary of exhaustion. I watched myself care for Marcus day after day after day, bathing him, feeding him, exercising his limbs, managing his medications, cleaning him after accidents, soothing him through nightmares. I also saw the moments I'd been afraid of. Times when I'd snapped at Marcus out of frustration, my voice sharp, "Marcus, I just changed those sheets an hour ago." Times when I'd sighed heavily, showing my exhaustion, "I can't do this right now, I need 5 minutes to myself." Times when I'd been less gentle than I should have been during a transfer, my patience worn thin. But I also saw what came after those moments. Saw myself immediately apologizing, voice thick with guilt. Saw myself sitting beside Marcus's bed, holding his hand, crying and telling him I was sorry, that I loved him, that I was just so tired but that wasn't his fault. Saw myself being tender even when I was at my breaking point. The footage told a story of human imperfection. Of someone doing their absolute best under impossible circumstances. Of love strained to its limits but never breaking. But would anyone else see it that way? Or would they cherry-pick the worst moments, edit out the context, and construct a narrative of abuse? I found 3 other falls in the past month alone. Each time, the pattern was the same. Marcus attempting a transfer, losing balance, me trying and failing to catch him entirely. Each time, I immediately assessed him and cleaned up any resulting mess. But I'd only taken him to the hospital for one of those falls, when he'd hit his head and I was worried about a concussion. Should I have taken him every time? The question haunted me. But each emergency room visit cost us $1,000 we didn't have, even with insurance. The medical debt was already crushing us. I'd made judgment calls based on my nursing assessment and our financial reality. Were those judgment calls neglect? Or were they the impossible choices that millions of family caregivers had to make every day? I navigated back further in the footage, looking for the other injuries Dr. Marks had mentioned. Old fractures. Various stages of bruising. I found moments that could explain them. Marcus catching his arm on the bed rail during a turn, banging his shin on the wheelchair footrest, knocking his elbow on the bathroom doorframe during a transfer. Each incident had seemed minor at the time. Marcus had winced, I'd apologized, we'd moved on. He'd never complained of severe pain, never indicated that anything was broken. How was I supposed to know that his bones had become so fragile that minor impacts were causing fractures? At 2 a.m., my laptop battery dying and my eyes burning with exhaustion, I finally closed the computer. The footage existed. It documented the truth of our lives. But I wasn't sure if the truth would be enough. I dragged myself to my bedroom, the room I'd barely used in 5 years, sleeping instead in the recliner next to Marcus's bed so I could hear if he needed me during the night. My own bed felt strange and cold and wrong. Sleep wouldn't come. I lay in the darkness, thinking about Marcus alone in the hospital. Was he sleeping? Was he frightened? Was he calling for me? The guilt was suffocating. I'd promised him, 5 years ago when he came home from the rehabilitation center, that I would take care of him. That I would be there for him no matter what. And now I'd broken that promise, not by choice but by accusation. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Marcus Watson. I've spoken with Reverend Coleman about your situation. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow at 8 a.m., before the home visit. I'll represent you pro bono. Don't speak to anyone about the case without me present. We'll get through this." I read the message 3 times, each word a small lifeline in the darkness. Someone believed me. Someone was willing to fight for me. I typed back, "Thank you. I'll be there." But even as I sent the message, the fear remained. Because I knew how these stories went. I'd seen the news reports, read the articles. Black women accused of crimes against white victims rarely got the benefit of the doubt. The presumption of innocence didn't always extend to people who looked like me. And even if I was eventually cleared, what would be left? Would Marcus be taken away from me, placed in the very facilities I'd been trying to protect him from? Would our life together be over, destroyed not by his accident but by suspicion and prejudice? I thought about checking the cameras again, obsessively reviewing every frame to prepare for what was coming. But exhaustion finally dragged me under, pulling me into a fitful sleep haunted by images of Marcus falling, and me never quite able to catch him. Part 3. Building the Defense. The law office of Marcus Watson was nothing like the imposing mahogany and leather spaces I'd imagined. It was a modest suite in a converted house in a working-class neighborhood, with worn furniture and walls covered in family photos and community awards. The reception area smelled like coffee and the potpourri someone had placed on the side table. Marcus Watson himself was in his early 60s, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that radiated both warmth and fierce intelligence. He shook my hand firmly and ushered me into his office, where case files were stacked on every available surface. "Mrs. Thompson, may I call you Diana?" I nodded, sinking into the chair across from his desk. "Diana," Reverend Coleman gave me the broad strokes. "I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. Don't leave anything out, even the parts that make you uncomfortable. I can't defend you effectively if I don't know the whole truth." So I told him. I started with Marcus's accident 5 years ago, the construction site collapse that had crushed his spine, fractured his skull, and stolen the life we'd planned together. I told him about the months in the hospital, the surgeries, the rehabilitation that had achieved some success but left Marcus permanently disabled. I explained our financial situation in painful detail. Marcus had been a construction foreman, good money but not great insurance. The accident had happened on the job, but the workers' compensation had been tied up in legal battles for years, leaving us drowning in medical debt. I'd had to quit my nursing job because Marcus needed around-the-clock care that we couldn't afford to hire out. We were surviving, barely, on his disability payments, I said. About $1,800 a month. The rent alone is $950. Then utilities, medications that insurance doesn't fully cover, medical supplies, food. There was never anything left over. I couldn't afford home health aides or respite care. I couldn't afford to take him to the doctor for every little thing. I had to make impossible choices every single day. Marcus Watson was taking notes, his expression thoughtful. "Tell me about yesterday. Every detail." I walked him through the fall, my call to 911, the ambulance ride, Dr. Marks's examination, and her shocking accusation. I described the police interview, the social worker's questions, the feeling of being stripped of my dignity and presumed guilty. Dr. Marks said Marcus had multiple injuries in various stages of healing, I continued. Old fractures, bruising, malnutrition. She made it sound like I'd been systematically abusing him. But those injuries, they all have explanations. Marcus falls sometimes despite my best efforts. He bruises easily from blood thinners. His bones are weak from immobility. The malnutrition, God, that one kills me. It's because he has swallowing difficulties and depression. I do everything I can to get him to eat, but I can't force feed him. Do you have documentation of these medical issues? Some. Medical records from his doctors, though we haven't been able to afford regular appointments. Prescription records showing his medications. But a lot of the day-to-day care isn't documented because it's just me, you know? I don't write nursing notes on my own husband. Tell me about the cameras. I pulled out my laptop and opened the security footage. I installed these 6 months ago for safety reasons. They've recorded everything, every transfer, every fall, every moment of care. I've been reviewing the footage. It shows the falls, shows me responding appropriately. But it also shows I hesitated, shame flooding through me. It shows me being human. Shows me frustrated sometimes, impatient. Not abusive, but not perfect. Marcus Watson leaned forward, studying the screen as I showed him clips. He watched the fall from yesterday. He watched earlier incidents. He watched my daily routine with Marcus, the hours of care, the tenderness, the exhaustion. "This is good," he finally said. "This is actually very good. It corroborates your account. It shows the reality of caregiving. But will a jury see it that way?" The question burst out of me. Or will they see a black woman taking care of a white man and assume the worst? Will they see those moments when I snap from exhaustion and decide I'm abusive? He met my eyes steadily. "Diana, I'm not going to lie to you. The optics of this case are challenging. You're right that racial bias could play a role. We're going to have to work harder to overcome that prejudice. But we have truth on our side, and evidence, and witnesses who can speak to your character." "What witnesses?" "Reverend Coleman, for one. She's already provided a statement about your dedication to Marcus. I want to talk to your neighbors, any friends who visited your home, anyone who's seen you with your husband. We need to paint a complete picture of who you are and what you've been doing for the past 5 years." Most people stopped visiting after the first year, I admitted quietly. It's hard for people to be around disability and suffering. They don't know what to say, how to act. We became increasingly isolated. What about medical professionals? His doctors, therapists, pharmacists. We have Dr. Raymond Chen, Marcus's primary care physician. We see him every 3 months, though we've missed a few appointments when we couldn't afford the copay. There's Bethany Liu, the physical therapist who did home visits until our insurance stopped covering it. And the pharmacist at Walgreens knows us well. Marcus's medication regimen is complex. Marcus Watson was typing rapidly on his laptop. I'll contact all of them, get statements about Marcus's condition and your care. What about family? His family, your family? That question opened an old wound. Marcus's parents died before his accident. He has a sister, Jennifer, in California. She visited once, right after the accident, but she has her own family and couldn't take time off work to come regularly. We talk on the phone maybe once a month. As for my family, I paused, the old pain resurfacing. My mother died when I was 23. My father remarried and moved to Florida. We're not close. I have a brother, Terrence, but he's been deployed overseas with the Army for the past 8 months. So you've been doing this essentially alone? Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper. Completely alone. He was quiet for a moment, then asked gently, Diana, have you been taking care of yourself? When was the last time you had a full night's sleep? When was the last time you saw a doctor for your own health? I couldn't remember. The question itself felt absurd. There's no time for that. Marcus needs you healthy and functional, he interrupted firmly. What good are you to him if you collapse from exhaustion or stress? This is important, Diana. The prosecution might try to paint you as someone who snapped under caregiver burden. We need to show that while the burden was real and enormous, you were coping with it, managing it, not spiraling into abusive behavior. I was coping, I insisted. I was exhausted, yes. Sometimes I felt like I couldn't take another day. But I never hurt Marcus. I never would. I believe you, he said simply, and those 3 words nearly undid me. Now we need to make sure everyone else believes you too. Let's talk about this home visit. Sarah Winters from APS is coming at 9. I nodded. I'll be there with you. Don't let her intimidate you, but also don't be defensive. Answer her questions honestly. Show her the cameras, the footage, your medication logs, therapy schedules, anything that demonstrates the level of care you've been providing. We want her to see that while your resources were limited, your commitment and competence were not. What if she still thinks I'm neglectful? What if she recommends removing Marcus from my care permanently? Then we'll fight it. Diana, this is going to be a process. It's not going to be resolved today or tomorrow. But I need you to stay strong, stay focused, and trust that the truth will emerge. I wanted to believe him. But trust felt like a luxury I could no longer afford. Part 4. The Investigation. Sarah Winters arrived at exactly 9 o'clock, accompanied by Detective Kowalski and a woman she introduced as Dr. Patricia Summers, a forensic medical examiner. My stomach dropped at the addition of another investigator. Marcus Watson squeezed my shoulder reassuringly as we let them in. I watched their faces as they took in the apartment. It wasn't much, a modest 2-bedroom that I'd converted to accommodate Marcus's needs. The living room had become a rehabilitation space with parallel bars I'd bought secondhand, exercise mats, resistance bands. The second bedroom, which should have been Marcus's care suite, was where he spent most of his time. This is where Marcus stays, I said, opening the door to reveal the hospital bed, the medical equipment, the wheelchair and walker, the bedside table organized with supplies. The cameras blinked red in the corners. I sleep in the recliner here, next to him, so I can hear if he needs me at night. Dr. Summers was examining everything with sharp eyes, taking photographs. She looked at the grab bars I'd installed in the bathroom, the shower chair, the raised toilet seat. She opened the medication organizer, checked the prescription bottles, made notes on her tablet. How often does Marcus bathe? She asked. I give him bed baths daily. Full showers twice a week. That's what his physical therapist recommended to prevent exhaustion and falls in the shower. And bowel and bladder care. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, discussing such intimate details with strangers. Marcus has a catheter. I manage it according to proper protocol, sterile technique, regular changes, monitoring for infection. For bowel movements, I assist him with transfers to the toilet when possible. When he can't transfer, I help him with a bedpan. Sarah Winters was examining the chart I'd made on the wall. Marcus's daily schedule, medication times, therapy exercises, doctor's appointments. This is very detailed. I was a nurse, I reminded her. I know the importance of documentation and routine. Detective Kowalski pointed to the cameras. Do these record continuously? Yes. They save footage for 30 days on a cloud server before automatically deleting to make space for new recordings. We'll need access to all of that footage. Marcus Watson stepped forward. We're prepared to provide that, Detective. My client has nothing to hide. The footage will corroborate everything she's told you. For the next 2 hours, they went through everything. They examined Marcus's medical records, the stack of unpaid medical bills, my own nursing credentials and employment history. Dr. Summers asked detailed questions about each of Marcus's conditions, his medication regimen, his therapy protocols. I answered everything as thoroughly as I could, fighting to keep my voice steady, professional. Mrs. Thompson, Dr. Summers finally said, I need to understand why Mr. Thompson has multiple healing fractures that were never medically treated. Because I didn't know about them, I said, my voice breaking. Marcus never told me he was in that much pain. I do daily skin checks, range of motion exercises. I'm constantly monitoring him. But I can't see inside his bones. If he didn't tell me something was seriously wrong, how was I supposed to know? Does Mr. Thompson have cognitive impairments that might affect his ability to communicate pain? Yes. From his traumatic brain injury. He has some memory issues, some processing delays. His pain perception might be altered. That's documented in his medical records. Sometimes he doesn't realize he's hurt until much later. Or, Detective Kowalski suggested, his voice hard, he might be afraid to tell you when you hurt him. The accusation hung in the air like poison. I felt Marcus Watson's hand on my arm, a silent reminder to stay calm. Detective, my lawyer said coolly, you're making unfounded accusations. My client has cooperated fully with this investigation. She's provided evidence, documentation, and camera footage that supports her account. If you have specific evidence of abuse, present it. Otherwise, you're engaging in speculation based on bias. Bias. Detective Kowalski's eyebrows rose. Yes, bias. The bias that assumes a black woman caring for a white man must be doing something wrong. The bias that views her exhaustion as evidence of malice rather than evidence of a broken healthcare system that forces family members to provide complex medical care with no support. Sarah Winters held up her hand. Let's stay focused on the facts. Mrs. Thompson, I'd like to review some of the camera footage with you. Can you show me the fall from yesterday? I pulled up the footage on my laptop, my hands shaking. We watched it together, watched Marcus shift his weight, lose balance, fall despite my attempt to catch him. Watched me immediately assess him, call 911, stay calm and professional even as my own heart was breaking. Show me the other falls from the past month, Sarah requested. I queued up the clips I'd marked. 3 falls in 30 days. Each one following the same pattern: transfer attempt, balance failure, me trying and failing to prevent the impact entirely. Each time, I responded appropriately, assessed for injury, provided care. Why didn't you take him to the emergency room after these falls? Dr. Summers asked. Because my nursing assessment indicated he wasn't seriously injured. No loss of consciousness, no signs of fracture, at least not obvious signs, normal vital signs, no acute distress. And because I hesitated, then forced myself to continue. Because we couldn't afford it. An ER visit costs us $1,000 or more even with insurance. I had to weigh the medical necessity against our financial reality. That's a choice many family caregivers have to make, Marcus Watson interjected. It's not neglect, it's the harsh reality of healthcare in this country. Dr. Summers was studying the footage intently. Mrs. Thompson, can you show me your daily routine with Marcus? A typical day of care. I pulled up footage from a week ago, before all of this started. I narrated as we watched. This is the morning routine. I wake him up around 7, check his skin for any breakdown, help him with toileting, give him his morning medications. Then I help him wash up, get dressed. This takes about an hour. Then breakfast. I've made scrambled eggs and toast, cut into small pieces because of his swallowing issues. You can see I'm helping him eat, making sure he takes small bites, monitoring for any choking. We watched me work through the morning, positioning him in his wheelchair, doing his range of motion exercises, helping him with his breathing exercises. Then physical therapy, helping him use the parallel bars to practice standing and balance. This is around 10 o'clock. After therapy, he's usually tired, so I help him back to bed. He rests while I do household chores, prepare lunch, manage his medical supplies. Around noon, lunch and afternoon medications. Then maybe we watch TV together, or I read to him. He used to love reading, but his vision was affected by the brain injury. The footage showed my afternoon routine, more exercises, another bathroom transfer, skin care to prevent bed sores, checking his catheter, adjusting his position. Then dinner preparation, evening medications, getting him ready for bed. You can see I'm with him almost constantly, I said quietly. The only time I'm not in the room is when I'm in the kitchen or bathroom, and I can hear him from there. At night, I sleep in that recliner. I wake up multiple times to check on him, adjust his position, help him if he needs the bathroom. Sarah Winters was watching with an unreadable expression. This is comprehensive care. It's what he needs. It's what I promised him I would provide. It's also an enormous burden for one person. Yes, I admitted. It's enormous. It's exhausting. Some days I don't know how I'll make it through. But that doesn't mean I hurt him. That doesn't mean I don't love him. Dr. Summers had moved to the window, looking out at the parking lot below. When she turned back, her expression had shifted slightly, less clinical, more human. Mrs. Thompson, I'm going to be honest with you. When I arrived here today, based on the hospital's report, I expected to find evidence of a neglectful or abusive situation. What I'm seeing instead is evidence of someone doing their absolute best under extremely difficult circumstances. Hope flared in my chest, fragile and uncertain. However, she continued, that doesn't change the fact that Mr. Thompson has serious untreated injuries. The question isn't whether you intended harm. I'm increasingly convinced you didn't. The question is whether you have the resources and capacity to provide the level of care he needs. I do have the capacity, I insisted. If I had the resources, if we had better insurance, if we could afford home health aides, if we had family support, there wouldn't be any question. But I'm doing the work of an entire care facility by myself, on almost no budget. That's not my failure, that's a system failure. She's right, Marcus Watson added. And that's what makes this case so problematic. You're essentially punishing Diana for the failures of our healthcare system. She's provided years of skilled nursing care, prevented complications, kept her husband alive and as comfortable as possible. The fact that she's done this while poor doesn't make her a criminal. Sarah Winters was quiet for a long moment. I need to speak with Mr. Thompson. He needs to be interviewed about his care, about his relationship with his wife, about these injuries. When can I see him? I asked, the question I'd been holding back bursting out. Please, he must be so confused and scared. He needs me. That's not my call, she said. That's up to the detective and the hospital. But Mrs. Thompson, she looked at me directly. I'm going to recommend that Mr. Thompson be temporarily placed in a skilled nursing facility while we complete our investigation. Not because I think you've abused him, but because he needs immediate medical care for his injuries and a full assessment of his needs. No. The word came out as a moan. Please, not a facility. You don't understand what those places are like, especially the ones that take Medicaid. He'll be neglected, forgotten. At least at home he has someone who loves him. It would be temporary, Sarah said. A few weeks at most, while we sort this out. And it would give you a chance to rest, to take care of yourself, to prepare for his return home. If he returns home, Detective Kowalski added. That's not a given. I felt the world tilting under me. Everything I'd feared was happening. Marcus was being taken away from me, our life together was being dismantled, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Marcus Watson was already on his phone, making calls, preparing the legal battle I knew was coming. But all I could think about was Marcus, alone in a hospital bed, wondering where I was and why I'd abandoned him. After they left, I collapsed into the recliner by Marcus's empty bed and cried until I had nothing left. Part 5, Marcus's Voice. 3 days later, I finally got the call I'd been desperately waiting for. Marcus was being released from a hospital, not to come home, but to be transferred to Riverside Care and Rehabilitation, a skilled nursing facility about 20 minutes away. And I was being allowed to visit him, under supervision. My hands shook as I drove to Riverside. Marcus Watson had briefed me on what to expect. Our conversation would be monitored, possibly recorded. I should be natural, affectionate, but also careful not to say anything that could be misinterpreted. Don't apologize profusely, it could sound like an admission of guilt. Don't make promises about bringing him home soon, I couldn't guarantee that. The facility was newer than I'd expected, with bright paint and cheerful artwork on the walls. But underneath the pleasant veneer, I recognized the familiar signs: understaffed floors, the smell of industrial cleaners mixed with something less pleasant, the sounds of call bells going unanswered. A social worker named Janet Park met me in the lobby. "Mrs. Thompson, before you see your husband, I need to explain the ground rules. You'll meet in a common area, not his room. I'll be present the entire time. You cannot discuss the case or the investigation. You cannot make any statements about what happened or about his care. This visit is purely to assess his comfort level with you and to allow him to express any concerns he might have." "Does he have concerns?" The question came out strangled. "We need to hear that from him directly." She led me through sterile hallways to a sitting area with large windows overlooking a garden. And there, in a wheelchair by the window, was Marcus. My heart broke all over again at the sight of him. He looked smaller somehow, more fragile than when I'd last seen him. His left arm was in a cast I hadn't known about, one of the fractures, clearly set and splinted now. His face was pale, his eyes distant. "Marcus," I breathed, moving toward him. His head turned at my voice, and something shifted in his expression. Recognition, relief, love, it all flooded his face at once. "Diana." His voice was rough, uncertain. "Diana, where have you been? Why did you leave me?" I dropped to my knees beside his wheelchair, taking his good hand in both of mine. "I didn't leave you, sweetheart. I would never leave you. There's been a misunderstanding, but we're going to fix it, okay? Everything is going to be okay." "I don't understand what's happening." There were tears in his eyes. "The doctors keep asking me questions. About you. About whether you hurt me. I told them you would never hurt me, but they keep asking." "Mrs. Thompson," Janet Park's voice cut in, warning in her tone. "Remember the guidelines." I bit back the words I wanted to say, that this was all a terrible mistake, that someone had accused me of something I didn't do, that I was fighting to bring him home. Instead, I just held his hand and tried to smile. "I know it's confusing. But I'm here now. How are you feeling? Are they taking good care of you?" "My arm hurts." He gestured to the cast. "They said it was broken. I don't remember breaking it." "You fell, remember? A few weeks ago, you fell during a transfer and hit your arm on the wheelchair. You said it was sore, but you told me it was fine." I could hear the defensive note creeping into my voice and forced myself to soften it. "I should have insisted on getting an X-ray." "I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," Marcus said immediately. "I didn't want to go to the hospital. I hate hospitals. I told you it was fine." Janet Park was taking notes. I tried not to let it unnerve me, tried to focus only on Marcus. "What's this place like?" I asked. "Are your nurses kind to you?" Marcus's expression clouded. "They're busy. There's so many people here, and not enough nurses. Last night, I needed help getting to the bathroom, and I had to wait almost an hour. He stopped, shame crossing his face. "I had an accident." They weren't happy about having to clean it up. Rage burned through my chest. This was exactly what I'd feared, exactly what I'd been trying to prevent. "Did they change your catheter?" "I don't know. Different people keep coming in. I don't know their names. I don't like it here, Diana. I want to go home. Why can't I go home? Mrs. Thompson, Janet warned again. I squeezed Marcus's hand. Soon, I hope. But for now, you're here so the doctors can help you heal. That broken arm needs to mend. And you need to rest and regain your strength. But who's taking care of you? Marcus asked, and the question pierced straight through me. Even now, worried about his own situation, he was thinking about me. You need to eat. You need to sleep. Promise me you're taking care of yourself. I promise, I lied, because I'd barely eaten or slept in days. We sat together for another 30 minutes, talking about inconsequential things, the view from his window, the physical therapist who'd started working with him, the food, which he said wasn't nearly as good as mine. Every few minutes, Marcus would ask when he could come home, and every time, I'd have to deflect, change the subject, while my heart cracked a little more. Finally, Janet Park stood. I think that's enough for today, Mrs. Thompson. Already? I just got here. Mr. Thompson needs his rest. You can visit again in a few days. A few days. After 5 years of constant togetherness, a few days felt like an eternity. I hugged Marcus gently, mindful of his injuries. I love you so much, I whispered. Never forget that. Never doubt it. I love you too. His voice broke. Please come back soon. I will. I promise. As I walked out of that facility, leaving Marcus behind, I felt like I was being torn in half. Every step away from him was agony. But I forced myself to keep walking, to get to my car, to hold myself together until I was out of sight of the windows. Then I sat in the parking lot and sobbed. Part 6. The Community Rallies. The story hit the local news 2 days later. I woke to my phone ringing off the hook, text messages and voicemails flooding in. Someone had leaked the case to the media, and suddenly our private tragedy was public entertainment. Local woman accused of abusing disabled husband, read the headline on the Channel 7 website. The article was brief but damning, painting me as a suspected abuser, Marcus as a helpless victim. They'd used an old photo of Marcus from before his accident, healthy, handsome, whole. The contrast with his current condition was stark and intentional. The comments section was vicious. Typical caregiver abuse case. These people should be in prison. Why didn't anyone check on him sooner? Poor man suffering for years. I hope they throw the book at her. But mixed in with the hateful comments were other voices. Anyone who's ever been a family caregiver knows how hard this is. We don't know the whole story. The system failed this couple. Where was the support? Where was the help? I took care of my mother for 3 years and it nearly destroyed me. This woman needs help, not handcuffs. Reverend Pat called me, her voice tight with controlled anger. Diana, I've been fielding calls all morning. The church wants to do something, raise money, organize support, make some noise about this injustice. Are you okay with that? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to hide, to disappear. But another part of me knows that what's happening to me is happening to family caregivers everywhere. Maybe if we speak up, we can change something. Then let's speak up. I'm organizing a vigil outside Riverside tonight. We're going to show Marcus, and you, that the community stands with you. That evening, as the sun was setting, I drove to Riverside to find dozens of people gathered outside the facility. People from our church, people I'd worked with at the hospital years ago, neighbors I barely knew, other family caregivers who'd seen the news and recognized themselves in my story. They held candles and signs, support family caregivers, Diana Thompson is not a criminal, healthcare not handcuffs, black women deserve justice. Reverend Pat embraced me, and then I was surrounded by people offering hugs, prayers, words of encouragement. An elderly woman named Mrs. Chen took my hands in hers. I took care of my husband for 7 years after his stroke, she said. I understand. The whole thing, the exhaustion, the guilt, the fear that you're not doing enough. You're not alone. A man in his 40s introduced himself as David Martinez. I'm a nurse at County General. I've been following your case. What's happening to you is criminal. Not what you did, but what's being done to you. You provided skilled nursing care for years. You should be getting support, not persecution. Marcus Watson arrived with a camera crew from a local news station. Diana, they want to interview you. You don't have to do it if you're not ready, but it might help to tell your side of the story. I agreed, and found myself standing in front of a camera, lights bright in my face, a reporter asking me questions about the most painful experience of my life. Mrs. Thompson, how do you respond to allegations that you neglected and abused your husband? I looked directly into the camera, thinking of everyone watching, everyone judging. I devoted 5 years of my life to caring for Marcus. 5 years of waking up multiple times every night, of managing complex medical needs, of providing skilled nursing care without any help or support. I'm not saying I was perfect, no one is. But I loved my husband every single day. I fought for him every single day. And now I'm being punished for trying to keep him alive and at home with me instead of institutionalizing him. Do you have regrets about how you cared for him? Of course I have regrets. I wish I'd had more resources. I wish I'd been able to afford more medical care. I wish our healthcare system didn't force families to choose between bankruptcy and proper medical treatment. I wish I'd had the strength to be everything Marcus needed. But I don't regret loving him. I don't regret trying. And I will never, never regret fighting to keep us together. The reporter's expression softened. What do you want people to understand about family caregiving? That it's the hardest thing most people will ever do. That millions of families are going through what we went through, sacrificing everything, exhausting themselves, trying to provide care without adequate support or resources. That we need to change the system that makes this so difficult. And that when someone is struggling, they need help, not handcuffs. The interview aired on the 11 o'clock news. By midnight, it had been shared thousands of times on social media. Some comments were still hateful, but many more were supportive. This woman is a hero, not a criminal. I'm a family caregiver too. This could happen to any of us. The prosecutor should be ashamed. This is cruel and unjust. A hashtag started trending, #Justice for Diana. Marcus Watson called me at 1 in the morning. Diana, you're going viral. This is good. Public pressure might help our case. But be prepared for it to get intense. Media attention is a double-edged sword. I don't care about the media, I said. I just want Marcus home. I know. And we're working on it. I filed a motion to dismiss the investigation based on insufficient evidence. We're arguing that all of Marcus's injuries are consistent with his medical conditions and the documented falls, that there's no evidence of intentional harm. I've got statements from his doctors supporting this. The video footage is powerful. We've got a strong case. But will it be enough? It has to be. Part 7. Breaking Point. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, more interviews, official ones with prosecutors and investigators, unofficial ones with media outlets that wanted to tell my story. Every day I visited Marcus at Riverside, watching him grow more withdrawn, more confused, more unlike himself. The facility staff treated me with barely concealed suspicion. They monitored our visits, documenting our interactions, reporting back to the investigators. I couldn't hug my husband without wondering who was watching, who was judging, what innocent gesture might be twisted into evidence against me. Marcus wasn't thriving there. He'd lost weight, developed a pressure sore on his hip from inadequate position changes, caught a urinary tract infection from what I suspected was poor catheter care. I documented everything, took photos with his permission, reported concerns to the facility administrators. This is exactly what I was trying to prevent, I told Marcus Watson during one of our strategy sessions. He's declining there. They don't have time to provide the individualized care he needs. He's just another patient, another body to process through their system. Document everything, he advised. It supports our argument that your home care was superior to what he's receiving in a professional facility. Meanwhile, the investigation continued. Detective Kowalski interviewed Marcus multiple times, each conversation clearly designed to elicit statements that might incriminate me. But Marcus, despite his cognitive impairments, remained steadfast. Diana takes care of me, he told them every time. She would never hurt me. I want to go home to her. His doctors were interviewed too. Dr. Chen, Marcus's primary care physician, provided a statement that was entered into evidence. I have treated Marcus Thompson quarterly for the past 5 years. His wife Diana has consistently demonstrated exceptional knowledge of his conditions and appropriate care techniques. The injuries Mr. Thompson sustained are consistent with the documented falls and are predictable complications of his underlying conditions: osteoporosis from immobility, easy bruising from anticoagulant medication, and poor healing due to compromised circulation. I see no evidence of intentional harm. Bethany Liu, the physical therapist, wrote, Diana Thompson learned and implemented complex PT protocols with proficiency that matched trained professionals. She advocated tirelessly for her husband's care and never missed an opportunity to learn better techniques. The level of home care she provided exceeded what I've seen from many paid caregivers. Even the pharmacist at Walgreens wrote a brief statement. Mrs. Thompson always asked detailed questions about Marcus's medications, watched for interactions, and managed his complex regimen with impressive competence. She clearly prioritized his health and safety. But the prosecution wasn't backing down. They brought in their own medical expert, a Dr. Richard Foster, who reviewed Marcus's records and concluded that the pattern of injuries suggested systematic neglect and possible physical abuse. I sat in Marcus Watson's office, reading Dr. Foster's report, feeling like I might be sick. He's never met Marcus, I said. He's never seen our home, never watched the camera footage, never spoken to anyone who knows us. How can he make these conclusions? Because he's being paid to support the prosecution's theory, Marcus Watson said grimly. This is what they do. Hire an expert who will say what they want him to say. But we have our own experts, and ours actually know the case. The court date for the preliminary hearing was set for 6 weeks after Marcus's hospitalization. That gave us time to build our defense, but it also meant 6 more weeks of Marcus being away from home, 6 more weeks of visits under supervision, 6 more weeks of my life in limbo. I was losing weight, barely sleeping, running on nothing but coffee and determination. Friends from church brought me meals I couldn't eat. Reverend Pat stopped by daily to pray with me and make sure I was still breathing. Diana, you have to take care of yourself, she urged. You're no good to Marcus if you collapse. I'm fine, I lied. You're not fine. You're running on fumes. When was the last time you slept through the night? I couldn't remember. One night, unable to sleep, I sat in Marcus's empty room watching old videos on my phone. Videos from before the accident, when life was normal and whole. Marcus at a company picnic, laughing at something a coworker said. Marcus and me dancing in our tiny kitchen, him spinning me around as music played from my phone. Marcus asleep on the couch on a lazy Sunday morning, looking peaceful and young. I'd lost that Marcus 5 years ago. The man he'd become, disabled, vulnerable, dependent, I'd loved him just as fiercely. Maybe even more, because now our love was tested daily, proved daily, earned daily. And now they were trying to take even that away from me. My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Thompson. This is Janet Park from Riverside. I'm calling about Marcus. My heart stopped. What's wrong? Is he okay? He's fine, physically. But he's been very agitated tonight. He's asking for you, insisting he needs to talk to you. Normally we wouldn't allow an unscheduled call, but he's quite distressed. Can you come in? I was already grabbing my keys. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I broke every speed limit getting to Riverside. Janet met me at the door and led me to Marcus's room, a small space he shared with another patient, separated by a curtain that provided the illusion of privacy but not the reality. Marcus was sitting up in bed, tears streaming down his face. When he saw me, he reached out with his good arm. Diana, tell them. Tell them you didn't hurt me. I rushed to his side, taking his hand. I've told them, sweetheart. Many times. But they don't believe you. They keep asking me questions, trying to get me to say you hurt me. But you didn't. I remember falling. I remember all the falls. It wasn't your fault. His voice was rising, agitated. Why won't they believe me? Why won't they let me go home? Marcus, I need you to calm down. No. He was crying harder now. No, I won't calm down. This is wrong. What they're doing to you is wrong. You saved my life. After the accident, When I wanted to die, you gave me a reason to live. You took care of me when no one else would. You sacrificed everything for me. And now they're treating you like a criminal." "Mr. Thompson," Janet interrupted, "you need to rest. I need my wife," Marcus shouted, louder than I'd heard him speak in years. "I need to go home. I need Diana. Don't you understand? She's not my abuser. She's the only thing keeping me alive." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Is everything all right?" "We're fine," I said quickly, trying to soothe Marcus. "We just need a moment." But Marcus wasn't calming down. His blood pressure monitor was beeping a warning, his heart rate elevated. "Diana, please. Please fix this. I can't stay here anymore. I can't be away from you. You're my person. You're my whole world." "I'm trying," I whispered, tears flowing freely now. "I'm trying so hard to fix this." "Then try harder." The outburst shocked both of us. Marcus never raised his voice at me, never. "I'm sorry," he immediately backtracked, crying. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean, I don't understand why this is happening. 5 years. 5 years we've been together through everything. And now strangers are deciding our fate? People who don't know us, don't know what we've been through." He was right. That was exactly what was happening. The nurse had called for backup. A doctor arrived, talking about sedation, about keeping Marcus calm. I found myself pushed aside as they surrounded his bed, treating his emotional breakdown as a medical emergency rather than a human response to an impossible situation. "Mrs. Thompson, you need to leave," Janet said firmly. "You're upsetting him." "I'm not upsetting him. This situation is upsetting him. Nevertheless, it's time for you to go." I looked at Marcus, being held down gently while a nurse prepared an injection. Our eyes met across the crowded room. "I love you," I mouthed. "I love you too," he mouthed back. "Fight for us." "I will," I promised silently. "I will fight with everything I have." As I drove home through the dark streets, something shifted inside me. The fear and defensive posture. Before we continue to part 2, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any emotional stories like this one. Now, let's continue.